evening and welcome to Champions Television Network. Happy birthday, Zimbabwe, 45 years. Right, 45 years of good governance or misrule. That is the debate today. Nhasi tinenge chitauro dzakasiyana-siyana kuti tikugona kutonga here, tikutongeka zvakanaka here, utongi hwakanaka ndo hwakaita sei, and how did the celebrations go in the respective areas you are in. Again, happy birthday, Zimbabwe.
Welcome to Champions Network TV. Today it's Friday, where we discuss different stories and that are happening. But today, Zimbabwe happened to have attained our independence 45 years ago. And today, we are going to discuss various issues pertaining to Zimbabwe. So welcome, gentlemen and the lady.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe to start us off, zuva ratange tichifanira kutaura zvegochi-gochi nekumwa. Kwenyu kwaswera sei kusoko?
Kunotiri nani kutaura zvekumwa kunoda masupplier kumwa. Makorokoto Independence Day Zimbabwe.
Makorokoto iya.
Independence Day.
Okay.
Independence Day inini hangu ndoona riri zuva rekuti tiite review kuti kwatabva kwakamira sei, kwatiri kuenda kwakamira sei, toita sei kuti dai zvati mbichana nakei here, nekuti tinenge tichiti tiri kuzvitonga asi tiripo here kuti kufara here neutongo hwacho hwatiri mahuri. Saka izuva randinoona kunge kuita review kwakanaka kuti titarise kuti shure kwatabva chii chataita, chii chatagona, mberi kwatiri kuenda toita sei.
So basically you're saying it's a time when we evaluate systems and governance.
Yes. Tichitarisa panoda kugadziriswa pachigadzirwa, nekuti tikangopemberera kuti tiri paindependence isu tisina mufaro neindependence yacho, nekuti kuzvitonga kunoreva kuti tinenge tiri pakati pekufara, pakati pekuwaka, tichiwaka nyika yedu kuti tiri kuita budiriro. Saka zvinhu zvatinenge tida kufanirwa kuti titarise zvakadaro.
Tombonzwa Shumba, pane zvamambonzwa here pamapemberero anga achiitwa kuZimbabwe muno across the globe?
Yeah, tichingoona ma-pictures nema-videos from back home, from the celebrations. Yeah, it's a positive thing. Our people were celebrating 45 years of independence, which some paid the ultimate sacrifice for. So we are really happy for their contribution for us to be where we are today. But like Wamakombe said na Soko, we also need to reflect whether those gains of independence have been achieved by every citizen within the country. So those are the things that we despite being happy with the achievement that we attained in 1980, have we been actually able to deliver the good governance and the dignity for our people?
Vamakombe muri kunzwa zvotaurwa naShumba ezvanzi, can we say we have delivered the aspirations of dignity for our people?
Well, I acknowledge the concept of independence. But the aspect of happy independence is questionable. The happiness bit needs a lot of debate. There are certain aspects we've managed to brainstorm and achieved, and there are certain aspects we continue to struggle with. Corruption. Koba. The pandemic at that level is on the increase, making the country almost ungovernable. I know the term ungovernable becomes rather strong, but we are heading that way. So we need to explore the current concepts associated with the rule of law, governance, and correctional structures. Otherwise, it's fair to say munhu wese anongoona kaopportunity ari kuba. Ndisi kuti wese ari kuona kaopportunity ari kuba. Then we go into the minefield yekuti, is the police effective? County police yacho yakutobawo. Has it been engulfed in the whole system of poor governance, rule of law? Zvaisikaitika kunzwa kuti magistrate asungwa. Now it's happening these days. Hamina kuti munozvaona sei?
Soko wambobuda Shumba muri kuinzwa iyo kuti nyaya yecorruption, bad governance ndo yatotsika yedu here kana kuti zvakambotangira papi?
Haisi tsika. I tend not to go down that direction because vanhu vazhinji vane tendency yekuti us as Zimbabweans, us as Africans, you go around the world, I always say corruption knows no creed. It's not about skin color. Chinoitika ndechekuti you need to put systems in place that stops that corruption. And some countries, they take it a notch up. Ndosaka tichiti, if you look kunana China, when Xi Jinping came in, China was descending into that culture of corruption. But with his leadership, now people know corruption is, if you are caught, then the consequences are there for you to face. So corruption is something that every country grapples with, from one America to the UK to the developed world. They struggle, but what they have that we don't is institutions that makes that corruption very difficult to do, because you've got so many eyes looking at what you are doing. But the developing world, because we have got a few of those institutions, then I think there's this tendency that we rely on the goodness of an individual. To me, it doesn't work. If you rely on the goodness of an individual, of morality of an individual, you're not going to run a state. If you look at our history, Yema Kings, they used to hold people to account for certain offices that they held. So for us to start asking that people should be moral, I think it's just going down the wrong avenue, really.
So are we then saying that, the real problem evolves around the mechanics of leadership?
Yeah.
Are we failing to lead?
Yeah, exactly. Because what you need now is leadership that understands that all these institutions are no longer working as they should be. I think Mataura Wamakombe Mkati, police is now part of the problem. How do you solve that? Because these are the people who are supposed to uphold the rule of law. So which means lack of leadership leads to the point of where the police now, they don't abide by the rule book. And once you have that kind of situation, then everything falls apart. So what we need now is that leadership. People are not driven by their own interest, but by the interest of the citizens, to say they want to address issues that makes all Zimbabweans better off. So when we talk of corruption, we're not only talking of corruption, we're talking of safety, we're talking of dignity. Someone should be able to wake up at midnight to walk the streets of Harare. That's the level of dignity that we're talking about. People should be able to go wherever they want, knowing that they've got the safety, the state guarantees them that safety.
Okay, go on. Go on,
so this applies to everything, like even national defense, national security. You are making sure your soldiers are able to defend the country in the event of a threat. So it covers basically everything. Your borders are secure, your customs and immigration are doing their job.
Okay. The rule of law appears to have been relegated to the last number. How on earth are we going to correct this? Because the rule of law is the mainstay of a successful enterprise. And things are pretty bad in that area. Everything is marred by extreme corruption. There are times when we used to think corruption is a talk show. Now the reality associated with the corruption is being unveiled at unprecedented levels. So I think it's time we focus on how, why, what, when equation as regards how we are going to resolve the issue of the rule of law.
I think the rule of law is paramount, because without the rule of law, everything else you can try is not going to work. So for us, we need to make sure that we restore the rule of law. We know the courts are impartial. We know the police are impartial. And that takes a lot of dedication, a lot of hard work, and a lot of leadership.
Yes.
So it's all about leadership. I think munozviona kubhora, since Alex Ferguson left Man United, you see the results. They speak for themselves. Andozviziva kuti uri United supporter, toda kungokupa example kaekuti kana iyo Chelsea pakaenda Abramovich nemari yake things started falling apart. So all I'm saying is leadership. It was not even Abramovich going with his man. Ukada utarisa the kind of management team he had put in place, it guarantees those kind of results. So Inina, I always say management, and leadership. If you don't have those things, you're just wasting your time. Because what you need, you don't have, you don't need a lot of people to bring in the change. You know, I was reading the history of South Africa, and this historian said the three people changed the history of South Africa. For it to be industrialized, it took only 3 people. It says it took the Oppenheimer who brought in the finance. It took a guy called Dyke. And then it took the guy who was there, the president, I think he was Kruger then. So Kruger actually pursued this guy. The guy had left for Germany. And from Germany, he went to America. Kruger pursued, because of the intelligence of this guy, he pursued him to come back to South Africa. He said most of the parastatals in South Africa from the railway one, what do you call it? What do they call it?
Which one?
The South African rail, the one that runs their network. So that one, and most of the parastatals, this guy was the brains behind it. Of course, he was getting the funding to implement his ideas. So you don't need a lot of people in leadership. You just need a few people who are quite capable and can bring on that change. Same when you talk of Singapore. It was Lee Kuan Yew. And if you read his biography, he said, I had the option of also being corrupt and just filling my pockets with money. But I chose to change the direction of my country.
So are we then saying we need technocrats to run these countries, particularly Zimbabwe? Do we need a filtered set of technocrats to go into government and take over the reins?
Not necessarily technocrats. I think the word is overemphasized. You bring a technocrat who doesn't understand what is needed to be done. I think we have had technocrats before. You actually need someone who has got the dedication and the know-how. When I say dedication, someone who's supposed, you know what is happening with Trump, right?
Yeah.
You filter out all what people are complaining about, and you go on to uproot the tree. You know, you don't even sort of do a lot of listening, because you have a vision where you want to take the country to. So for me, for Zimbabwe to progress, we now have reached a tipping point whereby the leader that we need now is not a soft one. He has to uproot the branches and remake the civil service, remake the police. Of course, police are part of the civil service. Remake the state so that...
Are we saying we don't have an effective leader at the moment?
We don't have what?
An effective leader. Is the leader the problem, honestly? Manyala.
To be honest, you putting me on the spot here.
Because we are all saying...
You're putting me on the spot. I think
it's about leadership.
It's a collective failure of, I think...
Of institutions.
Yeah?
Collective failure of institutions.
Of institutions and of us as a people, civic
Absolutely.
society, and that leadership you're talking about.
So, how do we re-engineer this failure into something positive? That should be the starting point, isn't it?
Of course.
Yeah. So how do we invite the crowd into this effective debate relating to problem-solving approaches?
It's gonna take...
Well, it can't take time, because
it's gonna take time, because we already showed, as the civic society, we already showed that we don't understand politics. I think 2017, that's when we showed that failure to understand politics. Why do I say that? Because 2017, with what happened with the change of government, with the coming of the Second Republic, the majority of Zimbabweans were on the streets, right? So Zimbabweans were supposed to stay in the streets until they demanded the kind of government that they wanted. But instead, what we did is to give a blank check to the Second Republic, thinking that they go now act out of the goodness of their hearts, which I say it never happens when you look when you appeal to the morality of the person to do the right thing. So
Okay.
So what we wanted to do is to stay in the streets, demand the kind of government, the kind of accountability that we wanted going forward, but we didn't do that. But for us to say we'll come
somebody is
back,
saying we needed a brand new type of politics. Correct?
exactly, yeah.
So that brand new type of politics, what are we going to call it? Is it too late to institute it?
I think it's too late, because right now any form of if you try to talk about it now, no matter how patriotic you are seen as an enemy. And I think you agree with me.
So shall we say in 1980 there is something that we missed, which we also missed in 2017?
Yes, exactly.
Which we are likely to miss if anything happens in terms of the government.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter who is coming in, even the opposition. Let's say 2030, the 2028 elections are done, the opposition come in. I don't think they are ready. So we just gonna be, until we come to a point where we as Zimbabweans say this is what we want, and this is how we're going to achieve it.
Politically, we are saying the opposition is not ready to take the reins of power.
No.
They are not going to bring anything new. So
exactly.
It's a case of better the devil we know. So the devil we know has to stay and manipulate some correctional structures. Correct?
No. Because if you say the devil you know, there's no guarantee that the devil will know. Because at one time, with what happens in life, at one time, there will be a fracture of some sort that makes that that process or that inevitability that the current leadership believes in to just crumble. Let's say ZANU crumbles today. Who is going to fill in those shoes? So that's basically my fear, that if ever anything happens, because no one guarantees the future, if anything happens to ZANU, do we have anyone to stand in to run this country? Of course, we say we've got opposition, but to me, they are not a viable opposition that can actually stand up and be counted when it comes to running that nation. So we are in a bit of dilemma. So our prayers is maybe the devil we know continues, but if for any reason that they crumble, then we are in serious trouble.
I think last time we talked about the governance is an institution. It's because they've got absolute power. They are not accountable to anybody. Company, even company madiki. Unofanira kunge uri held responsible. Win accountability. But you the other day, not today, the other day you said about it should be an institution. Because then people are held accountable. Zvakafanana nekuti munhu ane power yese munondisunga chirudzika nokuti ndatadza how. But if there is an institution which is out ndiri pa-institution iyi haisi yangu, bato harisi rangu inini, but bato rine bumbiro remutemo inofanira kuteerwa nemunhu wese, because kufa kwangu inini handife nebato. Handiti. Saka that means inini mukanditi iwe uchienda unobata chigaro ichi, then imimi as a governing body, as an institution, muchauya moti iwe uri kutadza kapa takakuti ita so but iwe uri kutadza. At the moment there's nobody being held accountable for anything. Munhu aringoita zvaanoda paanoda, because the institution yacho yakatofa. I think that's where we want to start, kuti pa institution ipo apa ndopane hondo, foundation apa chisina. That means mukandisa pamune mandisa ipapo ini ndiri kungodyo handina wandodaira. Unodairani? Because munondisunga sei ndiri minister kana kuti ndiri president kana kuti munondisunga chirudzi.
So it's a case of decay and the center can hold no more.
Musoro wakatofa saka chitima chinofamba chirudzi.
So ogadzirwa sei musoro?
Kutotanga chaiko kutotanga kutoyanzoona kuti whoever kana kuri kunzi zvamataura kuti vanhu vanogona kufa. Institution has got to be put in place. Kutotanga kuti institution yedu yakamira sei. Ende kana munhu wakanganisa unotongwa sei, because kana dai mukatarisa kana kumabasa kwatiruko kune mitemo yekuti iwo job description yako ndeiyi, ukakanganisa mitemo yakadai unosungwa nemutemo wakadai.
So you're advocating for the rule of law?
Yes.
Like AEP?
Yes. Kuti even
how are we going to facilitate that?
Ameno chitotaura.
Aiwa todzoka pai handiti ukatarisa Russia after Boris Yeltsin handiti I think makombo unonyazoziva kuti ma-Russians engakuzikanwa sema-drunkards who never used to do any work. There was nothing. It was a laughing stock in Europe, Russia. Right? And then you have this visionary young leader who comes in to say, I'm going to remake the state. So this is what the kind of leadership we are looking for. I think we have quite capable Zimbabweans who can stand up to say, we need to remake the state. The state has been hollowed out. It's time to stand up and because kuti titi ma-institutions achangotanga kuzvicreata izvozvizvika, it won't happen. That's the honest truth. So ndosaka ndiri kukota vanhu vakaita sana Lee Kuan Yew, wana Mao in China his cultural revolution. What you are doing is you bringing in a new leader who can change the mindset and take the country in a totally different direction. So and Lee Kuan Yew, even though aita democracy, he was condemned in the West because they were saying he was autocratic. But the guy stayed in power for almost, I think he did 3-4 terms. But the one term we end. The West, they like that because by the time you don't see nyika yako haina kwairi kuita sei kwairi kuenda, maybe yatorwawo nerimwe dofu yoenda nerimwe direction. So what we need, that's why I was saying initially my idea was a transitional authority yekuti inomboti aiwa politics tomboisa paside for the next 20 years. Zimbabweans are so polarized. Taisa politics 20 years to concentrate upon my priorities, anoti education, healthcare, infrastructure. 20 years tachibudirira taakufara paya zvobva zvanzi achiita idemocracy yenyeme muchitsvaga iya chifomai mapati enyaya.
But we'll be dead by then.
Yeah, in the long run we are all dead, King said, but sometimes you don't do things for you do it for future generations.
So you're suggesting we recreate a mindset think tank which can facilitate and reinvent the failed institutions over a period of time. We sideline politics for a while and overly concentrate on those institutions, their rebuild and everything. And then hoping by the grace of God, things will recover and then we can go back to democratic rule if we need it or we don't need it. Correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's a task.
No, because if you don't do that, the dangers of not doing that is we'll just go in this merry-go-round.
Yeah, the merry-go-round is going to happen because, I mean, in parallel, besides Zimbabwe, there are also a lot of topics or agenda that are happening in terms of regenerating Africa itself. Some are talking about borderless Africa. Some are talking about different types of economic models. So henceforth, we've got a serious task. Before I even think of Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, I have to start thinking about reforming my own political country, the politics of my country. Now we are saying that, the politics of my country has to be sidelined. We have to focus on infrastructure, transport, education, etc. Institutional politics is what we need to be focused on. And that's a tall order, serious tall order.
Exactly, because if we had leadership from 1980, not only from 1980, when we started creating SADC, I think it's a pipe dream to say we can have borderless Africa. If within SADC you have not achieved anything up to now, I think if our leaders had shown that kind of leadership, by now Southern Africa, we would be having a SADC passport.
But that's the utopia of dreams at the moment. If you look at it critically, I was reading another article today. All roads are heading towards Africa. There's a reason why. While we are saying, we should be going to Europe, we should be doing this and that, all the Europeans are finding Africa a priority destination. There's a recolonization that is happening behind the scenes, which we are not privy to.
Exactly.
We are not really sitting down and having a constructive debate on these people who are coming into our countries and taking whole mountain and whole infrastructure and so on and so on. We need that kind of debate. Why are we allowing them to start those kind of events?
Because
Musoro are now being manufactured in China.
It's like what you said earlier.
Yeah.
When you allow corruption to go to such a level, it hollows out the state. So what's actually happening now? We've got reverse colonization whereby you end up not manufacturing anything. You are dependent on maybe China to provide you with all your basic needs.
Yeah.
So what we are saying is you need that kind of leadership that understands how a nation state is supposed to operate and really to defend itself. So what we are having now is anyone, due to corruption, the Chinese can come. At one time, I think people protested because they had started mining in Wange Game Park, right? And then I think it was when people started making noise, who allowed them to go in there. I think that's when you find that someone somewhere was given a backhand for that. So this is happening so often. And it's not only the Chinese, it's all the mining companies that come into Zimbabwe or Africa. They are doing this.
So the decay we have is unprecedented.
Exactly.
So we should start thinking about effective rule of law. We have to start by that.
Because we have these land barons like in Zimbabwe who can sell any piece of real estate to the highest bidder. And the book I'm reading now is this, this climatic change. It's another tool that's being used for recolonization, because you saw that I don't know, was it Saudi Arabia or UAE? With this massive land that they got to offset carbon credits. There's nothing offsetting carbon credits in that. These people have actually seen a way of using this climatic change to start coming into Africa and recolonizing us. So it's not given. When I say it's not given that even ZANU itself will last as long as it thinks it will, And it will be a disaster for us as Zimbabweans that at one time ZANU just decimates and there's no opposition in place to fill on these shoes. This is when now you have these international, will end up having like, oh, there's an international force like DRC. They send someone to be looking. Do you think once they set some people to come to Zimbabwe, those people are going to leave?
But then remember, Shumba, we are both agreed that, I mean, the opposition is in shambles. We don't have an opposition, right? We have a government that is in power. Now, is it a case of us revamping the opposition to an effective standard level, or leave it as it is?
You know, I think you had, I had this argument. I think you had what my take on it was to say the problem was when you don't teach your people politics. The current government from 1980 neglected that bit. So even if when you bring that opposition on board, their mindset is not ready to protect the we could say the gains of independence. They are not ready even to acknowledge their weaknesses. All they think is we are the new rulers. That's
remember,
what we get.
But remember, during the Lancaster House talks, I remember Ian Smith on court. He was saying he highlighted this quote that the Salisbury government ready to take over is extremely intelligent. And that was...
No. I don't believe that.
But that's what he said.
No. You see, this is the problem, Misha and Makombe. In as much as there are certain things in hindsight when you look, independence was great for us.
Yeah.
But there are certain things we took for granted. Yeah. You had people who were appointed minister who had never been in a ministerial job in his life. We had never run any sort of organization, right?
Yeah.
So you put that person into a very important ministry to say, now you running this, you are running this. It's not, sometimes to me, failure is not because they are incompetent. It's because they don't even have knowledge of what they are supposed to do. So for me,
failure to me is a model of participation. You can't fail before you participate. So once you participate, the system classifies you as a failure or a success story. So it goes back to the point, Yehuti, nothing ventured, nothing gained. That's how I look at it. How can you fail if you have not participated?
No. What I'm trying to say is, you know, I think even kana wakamboshanda my industry zvakaita Misha, you need that kind of experience to say kana paine basa rauri kutora, you might need to gain some experience before you are given kunzi task rako iri, let's say kuzesa kunzi ndiwe iri in charge of these meters or whatever. You must demonstrate the capability of doing those things, and it. So you come into a government, you are a minister, you should have that capability of doing, of knowing what the job, your job description entails you to do. Because as a minister now, the problem is you've got a lot of all the future generations in your hands. I think we underestimate the the importance or the gravity or the responsibility to which, when you are appointed as a minister, the damage or the positive contribution you can make to the country?
I believe the core issue evolves around our approach to education. I always tell people that education is rehearsed knowledge. It's not designed to make anyone a genius or a success story. Post-education, one must embrace exposure. It's only when you go through the minefield of exposure, you learn another module of structure that is active out there.
So this was, in hindsight, this is when I started to think about these things. This is the way I thought our government should have done it in 1980. You look for people with experience, right? You look for those ministers who were in Smith's government. You were not supposed to chuck them away outright. You tell them you're staying in the office to support the appointed minister for maybe at least 5 to 10 years.
They kept what's his name? Dennis Norman.
No, yeah, of course, that was positive. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But for other ministries, there were important ministries that were just given to people who didn't have a clue what they were doing.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So that in itself, it hollows out the institution.
Yeah, but
so this is where we need now. Takuda kana kuti makombe kana soko now wanoenda ne broom or a brush wachikika vanhu zvakaita mawo cultural revolution to say Zimbabwe of the future needs to follow this path.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not gonna tolerate this kind of corruption on this scale, because that corruption, it hollows out the state.
But okay, having said that, interesting point.
Magnitude ye problem iri kutaurwa naShumba ndeyekuti it was not only kuti tine one minister ari inexperienced. We had the whole government, from the prime minister to the everybody vari kungoya vasina kana experience vese, and they don't know how to make each other accountable. How did they navigate that? I know kuti pane rimwe bhuru randakamboverenga rekuti Mugabe had the wisdom kuti kuna Lord Soames, can you stay for 2 years kuti tidzidze, because na Lord Soames, I have got other business in London to do, so he only stayed for 3 months.
Because
it doesn't mean Lord Soames was the only person. There were some people even isusu ma-government departments etakashanda isusu, there were still warungu wekuti unokaona kamuchembere kemurungu kakagara ipapo kachirowa basa, waona. And they stayed for up to 15 years after independence. They were still in there running things.
Maonero andinoita kana not only government kana paishu yemapurazi iyaiya, dai zvakaitwa saizvozvo kuti iwe unogona kurima chiipawo makombe bandauko repurazi yako iyi, womubatsirawo nekumusapota kuti agonewo kurima. Kana uri pabasa unotomboitwa inonzi shadowing kuti uone udzidze kunyanya chinere ndikuita noise.
Pane background noise yakanyanya.
Okay, go on.
Kuitira kuti udzidze kubva kune anogona, like handover, kuti ari kuya pabasa wozogonawo kuti zvinofambiswa sei kubva kune anga aripo. Ndo zvamuri kutaura ndizvo kana ndaramba?
Ndizvozvo, but manje warungu izvozvo wakaramba, because 1998 pakaitwa inzi great indaba pamonomotapa, which I attended.
Yeah.
And uyo akazoita vice president Dr. Arthur Mutambara, ndo time yangaita problem naMugabe ipapo, akatiza akauya kuUK akazoenda kuStates. But that great indaba yakaitwa iyoyo, it included commercial farmers, civic organizations, it included trade unions and everything. Vachiti titaure nyaya yeland ka. You know, Arthur Mtambara, when he spoke prophetic words. Because in the time, ZANU had actually lost that Yengerichi referendum yokuchinja constitution here.
Yeah.
Yangaga lead wanana love Moma Tuku.
Yes.
So Arthur Mtambara came on stage and said, "You have wounded the lion. Mugabe is not happy." So I would urge my commercial farmers kuti wanzwisise nyaya yeland muZimbabwe munomu. He said, "Me and Mugabe, we don't see eye to eye. But when it comes to land, don't be mistaken about it. We fought for this land and it has to be redistributed. We cannot continue down the path of the current land distribution." The
Protocols.
yeah. So, Ziganzi, if I were you, Achitaurama commercial farmers, if I were you, I would make the initiative of approaching the government and say, "I've got 100-hectare farm. I want to redistribute it. But what I'm going to do is I'll pick maybe 10 farmers, give them 1 hectare each, teach them how to farm, give them equipment." And he said, that way you're protecting yourself from what's coming towards you. But they were so arrogant. I think the arrogance was thinking that Mugabe was not going to press the nuclear button on the land distribution.
Well, he did.
And actually, that's what he did. They never expected, because, you know, before that, they'd showered him with all sort of praises and all sort of awards across the world. So they thought, now he's in our camp, he's not gonna renegade on doing anything silly.
I think from that perspective, Mugabe demonstrated character. Yes, he did.
Exactly.
We needed that kind of thing. But from then onwards, in terms of land distribution protocols and so on, I think the cracks started to show. We didn't have the right knowledge in terms of doing it correctly. How are we going to demarcate this vast, empire of land?
No, the knowledge was there.
No, I don't think so.
No, the knowledge was there, Makombe.
So if the knowledge was there, why is the system such a shambles?
Greed and corruption was at the forefront. Greed, the demarcation was done. Even my surveyors, they did their job, but who got the farms at the end of the day is where
but
the problem.
Remember, who owns what? They already knew that. Oh no,
exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, we that.
Good evening, guys. Can I come in? Because I heard an interesting comment about Mugabe demonstrating character.
Yes.
Press the land nuclear button, as you guys put it across.
Yes.
Can I take a different perspective? I don't think so. He was cornered.
Cornered by who?
Right. So if you look at the events, right, leading to kutorwa kwe Minda, that came after our involvement in the DRC. Are you aware?
Yeah, I know that.
And do you know, Kuti, our involvement in the DRC started more problems for the country than people know.
Of course. Yeah.
So even the current opposition came into place because of our involvement in the DRC.
That's debatable, but let's not make it a
unless you don't know how MDC was formed. Because the question is, do you know how MDC was formed?
Yeah, to a certain extent, yes.
So for me, it's because I know the topic is about 45 years of independence, right? Where have we gone? And one thing that I think somebody mentioned, the merry-go-round. Whilst we may really pin this on poor governance or incompetent leadership, I think we need to take a holistic view to this challenge for African leaders in general. Why I say this? Because when I look at the Libyan story, I wouldn't say Gaddafi was incompetent.
No, he
I look
wasn't.
at what happened to the state. So, yes, ZANU-PF, the current government, or maybe part of Mugabe's government, right, had phases of gross incompetence, right? But we should also not ignore the impact of external forces. Because in as much as we want to charter a future for African government or Africa as a continent, we should be aware of the external forces that will never want that to happen. France can never exist when Africa unites. France will be done.
Yeah.
So the thing is, yes,
But
we can say,
but the gravy train will have to continue.
but
It's just like just like the Mugabe nuclear power, which was ignited.
And where are we? Where are we with it?
Where are we with it? We have got the land. Whether fair or foul, we've got it.
Guys, let's face it. Most people are wishing free independence days. Sangatiri none. Than where we find ourselves in. Let's face this.
That could be an argument, but the bottom line is, I mean, we have got the land.
What are we doing with the land?
That's a debate for another day.
But I thought it's when people talk of independence, the central issue is we say we got political independence, but that's meaningless. You know, I think what we need is economic independence. And that will not get easily. That will require a struggle deeper than all the Chimurengas. Because the forces you are fighting against are bigger than what people can imagine. Now we talk of China, the involvement of China in Zimbabwe right now. And among some of our people, they believe China is there to help us. No.
No, I hear you, Dr. Chamapi.
And the other thing, Shumba, is there's one thing that strikes me. We have people who go and get some degrees in economics, finance, right? And they are taught about taxation. One EU parliamentarian, a white guy, he said, Africa finds itself where it is because of us. And he explains why. He says, what we do as the West, or the United Nations, or the IMF, right? We go to these African countries and we say, we are going to give you money. Zimbabwe, that was the ISAP, yep. That's what they did. Do this, we'll give you money, but you have to manage your economy this way. Hello? Now, the end game, or what they say is, but you have to pay us back. And for you to pay us back, raise taxes on your people. Now, taxation is one of the biggest killer of why we never get economic independence in Africa. The reason being, if you are taxed so much, you cannot build a capital base to start your own business.
Dr. Chamapiwa, whose fault is that?
This is exactly my point, because most people to date, like I always argue, you don't need money to be successful. You don't need anyone's help.
So what has happened? What has happened? I always argue with our Western education, right? To say, I think you have hit the nail on the head to say, when you do economics here, unless you change your mindset to say, what I've learned, how does it apply with my own economy? Because the principles that you are taught in economics here, they sort of suit a certain narrative, right?
Absolutely.
Unless you think outside the box. Because before I did economics, I used to think that IMF and the World Bank are helpful organizations, right?
Mhm.
But when I dig deep now, how they operate and what they did to Zimbabwe, especially with the ASAP, but to me, they destroyed the industrial base of Zimbabwe, right?
Absolutely. Mhm.
But to me, it's not the IMF or the World Bank's problem. The problem is with us, whether it's that Western education that makes us listen more to them than coming up with our own solutions.
Shumba,
That's the main problem.
Shumba, it goes deeper than that. If you could go on YouTube or look for a book called The Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Yeah, I know the book.
You know that book, right? So it goes deeper. You see how captured African leaders are. You might come up with these brilliant ideas. Like we're talking like this, oh, guys, we can do that. No, you can't. It's not
No,
that
you
simple.
can.
No, you can. Yes.
Chamapiwa.
You can. Dr. Chamapiwa.
You can.
Who has
Yes.
done it?
When Singapore have done it, we've got examples. The reason why Africans or most countries don't do it, I said it the other day, is we always go on the rooftop to say whatever we want.
Yeah.
Right?
No, guys. Okay, no. Go back to your history. You know, the scramble for Africa was called the scramble for the Congo. Where was ever a scramble for Singapore? No, there's nothing in Singapore. Who wants what in Singapore?
That's not the way we tell
issue,
the story. That's not the way we tell the
African issue is
story.
different to any of these. You can't bring
No. If you say, the reason why sometimes I differ with you is
Gentlemen, let's bring our conversation, giving each other an opportunity to speak.
Okay, yeah.
So that we don't come as personal. We
are just passionate. We're just passionate.
Chamapiwa, can I just give you a question?
Go ahead.
Suppose, obviously, when you're talking on Champion Network TV, you're talking to the leadership of Zimbabwe, to the general population. What advice would you give to the leadership of Zimbabwe if they are to take the country forward?
That's an interesting question. Yes. Yes, you need to change the leadership. That means you need somebody with a vision that suits the needs of the country. But what I'm passionate about is reduce taxes.
Interjection. What are the needs of the country at the moment? Please don't tell me transport and all that.
No. There are several of them. The needs of the country. Okay. The basic human rights, we need to restore them. We need to open a platform where people can debate. We need to fight corruption. You see, that's key. We need to reinvest in our economic structures. But above all, we need a law enforcement, a functional law enforcement machinery, and that is hinged on changing the leadership.
You mean we need the rule of law?
Yes.
Yeah, we have some. That was the core thing that Tangana is. The problem we have is the rule of law. So, and I think previous day, but we also came up to say, for us to have a functional rule of law, we need leadership, and how our balance of responsibility happening between the executive, the courts, the legislation, and the security forces. Is there anything that can happen to those institutions to bring about this rule of law, which is at the center?
Is that directed to me? Okay.
I don't know anyone can answer that one.
And accountability.
So he's talking about the key wielders of power, how can they effect achievement of the requirements of the country? So you are saying accountability.
Absolutely.
How do we achieve that?
We achieve that by way of understanding what we have at the moment and things we can resolve. So it's about working from what we know into things we don't know about. The rule of law encompasses a lot. It's not just simply doing A, B, C, D. There are mechanics that have to be re-engineered at the moment. And we've got to start from there. Once we have got an effective rule of law structure, then we're in a position to go into the second phase of exposure. Once we have exposure, then we consolidate the knowledge we have. From knowledge, we are into wisdom. From wisdom, we're in a position where we can make effective decision-making processes.
Misha, I don't know, your mic is far away.
Okay, Shumba, Zanzina Vachamapiwa, we need the change of leadership. Where do we start changing leadership? And the leadership, is it at which level? Is it at the executive, at the bottom? Which leadership is being ineffective?
The top leadership.
No, I think he's hiding behind words. Ngabati
The presidium.
Go to the CEO.
No, but that's our yeah.
And I would do it. What the polite way I would manage this evolves around facilitate a state of emergency, 1, 2, and then invite everybody to reapply for their jobs.
It's a very good idea. Who is going to be policing that? Because I think we go back
we have a
to
task force. We facilitate a task force. It has happened here in England before.
This is England.
No. I'm not saying it's anything to do with that. I'm just transferring that kind of model to people out there.
These models, like Ishumba said, it's about thinking, looking at the Zimbabwean situation. And most of the time we make this grand mistake of trying to say we can learn. Because when I look at the English society, where it is and where we are, I mean, we're two totally different worlds. So
in what way?
You said
we use English as the medium of instruction.
No, but
we are academically sound. In what way are you saying?
Dr. Chamapiwa.
The structures that exist in England, right?
Yeah.
The behaviors you do in England.
Behaviors learned and can be unlearned.
It can be controlled too, if you didn't know that. Yes,
absolutely.
So it's never about just being learned or unlearned. In terms, you are actually forced to behave in a certain way.
No. Behavior and force. You can never use the word force and behavior in the same communication line. No.
Why not?
Well,
because
I'm saying
people behave. Some when they behave out of fear of consequences, yes, one can argue so.
No, what I was about to say, ndazotorerwa yetsvimbo yangu. What I was about to say is, I think we need to really relook at the whole thing. It's not about really, I don't think there's any form of reform that can come out of the current leadership.
No.
Because the incentive system that's there, because most of the time when you look at this, it's the incentive system that drives human societies.
Absolutely.
So when people are benefiting from the system, they want it to keep it going. So at the end of the day, we might say, because most of the people know what needs to be done, but the incentives they don't align with what they need. So if they put those structures in place, they know they're going to lose. So there should be consequences. That's why we say, if you find a leader, someone from outside the crop of the current leadership who comes in with a broom, because it's not like the laws, like you are saying, the laws are already there to hold people to account. It's just the enforcement of those laws. There's no one to enforce those laws. So what we need is someone who is coming, who is resolute, who really understands where he wants to take the nation to, and say, guys, the free ride is over. We're starting afresh. This is what's going to happen. We saw it with that boy in the Sahel, Ibrahim Traore. He said, enough is enough. We have enough wealth to make our people thrive. So this is the same, that's the same attitude that we need to say, we've got enough cake in Zimbabwe for everyone to enjoy, and we need to start afresh. And if it means the current leadership goes, so be it. But we need a new leadership. But don't replace the current leadership with the opposition, because they are cut from the same cloth.
Well said.
Kutaurwa neDares. Tomboti ndimi mapiwa chimuti nhasi. Munotangira papi?
Matani inini.
Hanzi mukapiwa chimuti mimi munotangira papi? Tinge tapinda mutrouble.
Mungatozoshama tisi tunotoita 10 things around.
Vane pakaipa.
Munotozoshamisika kuti ingatatambo-vasiya vangu vachitoziva zvavari kuita. Hanzi kugara nhakakuona dzevamwe. Zvazvinoita kana tikaona zviri kuitwa munomu, hazvirevi kuti tichatora exactly like that tinoisa kwedu.
No.
Tinoti we have to cut it to suit zveduwo isusu.
Customize it.
Yes. To suit zviri kuitikawo kwedu. But tichionawo kuti leadership dzinofamba sei. Handiti ukaendawo kudare kwevamwe unonzwa kuti dzinotongwa sei. Zvamuri kutaura zvakanaka fani kuti okay, toda vanhu vari accountable. Muenzaniso zvangu inini semunhu ari simple. Toti Ministry of Health yapuwa budget. And there then has to be a follow up kuti budget yatakakupai this year chiko chamakaita audit. Handiti budget yenyu Ministry of Health chiko chamakaita, aiwa takavaka chikoro ichi, takatenga mabhuku aya, takaita maexamination, zvakaita mari yakati pabudget yamakatipa pasara mari yakati. That's the accountability.
We are talking about audit evaluation.
Yes.
Europe,
accountability yamuri kutaura kai kuti kana Minister of Transport budget yako this year ndeyakati mari yakati, kupera kwenguva yakadai Ministry of Health ozobvunzwa kuti saka mari yatakakupai machiko chamakaita, ende zvinooneka aiwa takavaka rodhi tikazoita bridge zvakaita mari yakati, kwasara mari yakati, kana kuti mari yedu yakaperevedza pakati. Because at the moment zviriko here izvozvo, kana kuti jebra rongotiwo papiwa unodyawo kuseri kwemba uko akanya.
Tinayo AG office, Auditor General's office. Tinayo.
Saka chiko chiriitika.
But we never have time.
Is it transparent enough kuti tiri kuona kuti mari dzacho dziri kuendepi?
Ndopatadzoka tikati leadership.
Ndozvandinotaura. You need someone to enforce those kind of things. You need a group or institute, whatever, to enforce those kind of things.
Someone like a dictator. I'm not dictator. Asingamirire zvedemocracy hazvishandi.
Okay.
Because then corruption yacho ndo maperero aingatoita kuti okay, takupa mari kuti ndonoenda notenga sugar, wauya neshuga here?
Yes.
Because in the meantime ndikunoti tikapuwa mari kunotenga sugar, ndongoti sugar kwangu sina, ko mari yacho yazorasika murodhi, hapana tsananguro kubaye kunyatsomuona kuti mari yacho yakazoendepi.
Yeah, true. Pakaipa.
Zvamakaona zvakaitika kuzesa kuya kuti munhu anonzi apuwa mari yekuti ita zvezesa, mari yacho hapana chaitwa.
Kumbodare.
But even paka
muri kumboenda kure kugokwe kwakanzi wawake stadium. Aya anga achipwanyikawo nhasi uno pamvura apa. Would you say that was good value for money?
Asi mari yakapera.
yes.
Zvinhu zvakadaro, heads should roll. Anopuwa task yekuenda unogadzira infrastructure yakadaro. Then he does a shoddy job in terms of bringing the right workmanship or whatever.
Standard. Yes,
And
standard.
then he brings substandard stuff.
Yeah, in Hango, I think, guys, at Zimungwa, we find it very difficult to hit the nail on the head. But my view about Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwean people, and I bleed about this, they are captured people. They are captured.
No, don't say that. Who said that?
I'm telling you, why I say this. Can you imagine that blessed we are actually Mujeri? For what? So when you start to think around that, our problem.
Rule of law now.
Yeah, but
imimi vacho chamapiwa mataura nenyaya yecorruption tabvumirana nemi saka controversy iri papi
tirikutaura kuti we need to get rid of our wakati capture wacho.
No, Dr. Chamapiwa. I said, Dinini, corruption knows no color. Wherever you go, even in UK, Metiri, in America, there's corruption. Chinoita kuti corruption isaite manifest to the level that it is in Zimbabwe. It's the institutions.
Yeah.
So what has happened in Zimbabwe is the institutions have been hollowed out.
Institutional decay.
Most of us, we want to rely on the morality of an individual to behave in the right manner. It doesn't work. It has never worked. Yeah, corruption is inherent in every human being. It doesn't matter what color. But what holds people to account are institutions.
Yeah, I know, but not this corruption, but
No. Hapana kuti hausi corrupt. Hanzi Zuze akaba chingwa chowarungu. Akabatwa neIzuze. Zuze akabatwa nesamba.
Vana Zuze ndiana samanyika.
Okay.
Wakutanga undituga ipopa. Institutions hold people to account. That's why if you have Chineta Nema institutions, they are built to give that accountability. So I'll tell you, as a person who worked in the government, just see maybe 10 years after independence, and you go time my systems ain't actually robust. You go into office in the morning, right? You have to sign in. Boss wako anoona kuti wapinda nguwai, wasign in kuti ndapinda nguwai. You want to take a car out, government car, you have to sign in. Uchibva waita mileage anoitwa kuno ku UK, taizviita ku Zimbabwe uchinyora mileage yemotikari, where you going and what time you coming back, and you have to log on my miles ewaita wadzoka anditi. But if I tell you now, all those systems are gone. People just think it's free lunch. When you take a government car, you can do whatever you want with it.
No one will see me remote.
So those are the things that we are saying. The laws are already there. Ukaenda kuma statutes book as Zimbabwe right now. These processes I'm talking about, dzekuti kana uchishandisa government car, you've got to log on my miles ako, uchidzoka uchiloga on, you have to say where you are going and whether it's business or what. All those statutes are there, but nobody's following them. So what we're talking of a new kind of leadership is, you come in, you make sure all those things, everyone is not above the law. Those things have got to be followed.
We are looking for a new kind of politics.
Yeah, they have to be followed to the dot so that the thing can work.
Yes.
I want
That's
to
a good-
mabin are uncollected, and then you tell us what kind of nonsense is that?
You're on point, Makumbi. You're on point. We need a new kind of politics. Yes.
We are here. How do we start try to effect this new change of politics?
It's a crowd it is a crowd initiative.
No. Musatye imimi kutagetwa. Imimi tunga.
You can never do anything without the currency of the crowd. Ndokwazvinotangira ikoko.
Crowd. You need leadership, guys. When you talk of leadership, we're not talking about crowds here. We're talking about vision bearers, yeah. Like Mdara Makombe, we're talking about Mdara unengo urufunga zviri straight. Toda Mdara tukuda kutumai next week imimi. Mono address chi. That's what we do. That's how we can affect things.
Anenge achida kukutumaika ndo crowd yako.
No.
Because mukaita vashoma. Mukaita vashoma.
Mandatory people ka.
Mukaita vashoma ndo panouya corruption ipapo. Mukaita vaviri vatatu makuita corruption because hapana wamunoita accountable to.
Aiwa ipapo ndofunga ndowirirana nawachamapiwa ipapo because kuti mumirire kuti crowd ichaita izvozvi
not kuti crowd ichaita.
Alright, Shumba, muri kumirira kuti Makomba anoita izvozvo.
The crowd
follows vision yake.
That's what we know.
No, Makombe, I think iwewe unotoziya handi zvakafanana let's say nyaya yemabusiness yetaura iyayi.
Yeah.
Unotoona kuti this person is good. Handiti?
Yeah.
And ukati ndoda kutanga company unogona kuti iwe mari iwewe chitanga company because I believe in your ability. Handiti?
Yeah.
The same applies to politics. Kuti tinoona kuti Makombe ka matauriro unoita, maitiro unoita, the way you conduct yourself. If we give you this responsibility to sort out this mess we are in, you are one person, we have got belief that this thing will be sorted.
If we, and we.
No, abantu vanhu vakawanda. Zvakafanana hanti tiri pano tiri kutanga tobva tati isusu tatoidentify kuti Makombe zveshuwa ka is got the ability.
No, Makombe is the knowledge, but he gwara.
It's not about Guara. It's not about that. Far from that.
Aiwa, vachamapiwa mambotaura mukati kune anzoti Attorney General's office inoita audit General's office. I think one of the things that togona kutanga kuita kuti we can use our influence to begin to engage these people, even to come on this platform and tell people what are they doing in terms of putting up.
They will never come here. You're wasting your time.
They will never. That level of accountability went through the window. Our pindi. Because ndonyaya tiri kutaura misha, some of them wanotozotya kuti tichawabvunza kuti mune PhD zveshuwa here. Because chamapiwa anobva awapinda kaipopa chamapiwa aswera achitenderera kuti takanzwa kuti PhD yenyu ndeyenhema wadikwe awapinde because most of these people are incompetent. Waona. The problem yaita neZimbabwe ndosaka uchiona ndichiti the only solution for me, if you ask me, is a transitional authority. Isina sort of a figurehead of a president. It will be sort of a council that's running the country. Because the problem is Zimbabwe's politics is so toxic.
So you're talking about the governance council?
Yeah. It's so toxic that we always we are so tribal. Opposition zvese zvinoitwa nezanu zviri wrong, kana uri kuzanu zvese zvinoitwa neopposition. Saka the country is split in two and nothing functions under such circumstances.
But do we have... Sorry, go ahead. When I was talking.
iyo yamuri kutaura yacho inofomwa nani iyo transition yacho toita sei kuti zvifambire mberi?
Inofomwa nesu vanhu vacho.
You're going back to class again.
Dada kubvunzwa izvo zvafaka zvabvunzwa namwena wazvo. Do we have provisions in our constitutions for NTA?
You know, iko zvino vanhu vakuita buy into it. I heard Ibomandas talking about it. I started talking about National Transitional Authority, I think from 10 years ago. I wrote about it. Mugabachi Toripo. But the problem is, one white, you are just daydreaming because it's not there in our constitution. Then the sure when I went to the constitution is not guaranteed. But it's not good. We cannot. The reason why it cannot happen is nyayema incentive and abakutaura iyai. Yokuti opposition, one external funding, one chichi. Saka politics zeZimbabwe ndedzekuti zanu inotofarirawo kuti opposition inge iripo, even though they know that opposition is useless. It gives legitimacy to them. So it's all about incentive systems. And but for you to get around establishing an NTA, my solution you form another party, an opposition party, right? You run on that
yeah, Shandy, because opposition is hapana.
Yeah. Aiwaka opposition yakutobva kwetiri kaisusu wacho. Ndozotati toapointa makombe kadhiwa kutotanga.
Makombe akuna uzwa izvozvo. Makombe munhu wepeace. Samandika wada peace yawo. Awati zviro
then.
Yeah, isusu tisino kugona kuita. Isiri maginda gori atinoita.
Aiwa asiwa unozonyanyotokonya vanhu kayo.
Yeah.
Because panoda diplomacy cup.
Yeah.
Ndozvinozonetsa ndosachiti maacademics
unoziya chamapiwa pende ndichitaura newe paya ndikakuti iwewe problem yako ka unoblema vamwe pese paunenge uchiti we cannot do this because the external forces will do this to us, wana IMF wana World Bank. I understand you. Problem inoita nesu manje as Africans or as Zimbabweans, always, is it cultural? When we want to do things, we go on top of the roof to say this is what we want to do. Have you heard France if Africa becomes independent, France is finished, and it?
Yes.
But do you hear France going on the rooftop to say we're going to hold on to Africa no matter what?
It's a banking concept.
Autombowanzwi wachiti bufu nenyaya wapfanwa wakaita sana Ibrahim Traore kana tinongonzwa chete ma-assassination attempts, anditi? Because that's the modus operandi. Wese wana America nana CIA wanobva wataska kuti guys endamosota zvinhu izvo. Andiko zvino dzakubuda nyaya dzana Obama kuti the way yakatangisa inonzi Arab Spring iyai. Kuti CIA yakaituma, but to us ordinary people street tinechingoti ma-Arabs enganzwa nenhama akajamuka. But wanoita makara revolutions mu Eastern Europe mese CIA.
They create effective chaos.
But they don't preach about it. Until we get to that mindset, kuti tiite circumvent all these things that you are talking about. We can remain negative forever, but we cannot achieve it. But to me, the solution is when you get into power, you are working with the IMF. Wanokupa mari yekuti because ukairamba mari iyoyo wato target yawo, anditi? Iwewe tiambira mari iyoyo, but what you use it for is what matters.
Yeah. But you see, this is where you're not getting it right. whenever you receive IMF money, you receive it nema conditions.
Anenge aripo chamapiwa ma conditions. You circumvent those conditions.
No,
You find ways. You have. Unaona ndaitaura nyaya yema-sanctions. If you don't put your clever people at the forefront of anything, you end up in problems.
Yeah.
For me, say no to their money.
No.
I'm serious. Yes, say no.
Manje haupasweri neCIA ipapo uchitaura.
No, guys. No. Remember, hakuna munhu anokwaniswa kuzwa kuti handide mari. No, they can't. They can never force kutambira mari. No.
Hawakuforce, but
kutaura kuti around you.
One creator, even you're very. Do you know kuti munhu akabvisa yeye ndiani? Nkuruma pachigaro.
Yeah.
Who took Nkuruma? What happened to Nkuruma? What had he done kuti abviswe pachigaro? Do you know the book that he wrote?
Yeah.
Rakamvisisa pachigaro. And who was the person akamvisa pachigaro? And he was his fellow minister.
Yeah.
He had overseas visit Baudzgonza usiri president.
Yes, but my point is, I mean, no country, no organization, international organization is ever going to put money in an African country just to help that country. No.
No.
About them
That's not the way it works.
Now,
mari inouya muma-African countries, right? Inenge ine defined objective. Chatiri kutaura ndechekuti mari iyoyo kana yauya, let's use it wisely in line with our own objectives.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work that way, guys. Because
no.
Before,
where has it happened?
No, it might not have happened, but you are exercising your agility nekungwara kwenyu. You know kuti these people, if you try izvozvo muri kutaura kuti ukada kuita zvawanoda izvozvo hakuna kwetinoenda.
Hapana.
Ukada kuiramba futi mari yacho hakuna kwemunoenda.
Unongoti hausi kuda. All right.
So what you need to do is you unotambira mari, watambira mari, guys. You've got a team, competent team around you. Guys, tawana mari ye-IMF. Yanzi tinofanirwa kuishandisa this way, right? But isusu tiri kuda kuiusa in a way yekuti iwo vanofunga kuti taiusa zvawataura, but isusu taifambisa nenzira iyi.
Yeah.
If you've got those clever guys on the table, you can
achieve
their
own
what you're saying.
Forensic financial guys,
exactly.
Shown that way. It's possible.
Sanctions, instead of famba muchishambadza kuti tapuwa ma-sanctions, we want America gives you sanctions for its own interests. They're not going to remove those sanctions until they've achieved what they want to achieve. So if you kana kutoratidza udofo kuenda muchiti bvisai ma-sanctions itai zvakati, no, you shouldn't do that. Accept those sanctions and see ways of circumventing those sanctions. You put your best brains on the table to do it.
Well, yeah, but what I still struggle with, this idea, because number one, I don't believe the IMF goes around offering countries money. No, it's countries that request or apply for funding from IMF. So let's not say Uramba Maria Warukupa. No, you go and ask for the money.
Yeah, I know, but
when you do, then that comes with their terms. It's on their terms.
But sometimes you might need that money. You are right. Sometimes it's to stay away from that money.
Yeah, stay away from it.
My systems anoshandiswa na-IMF vanenge vachinyasoziva kuti isusu tine madeficits akadai. Tine madeficits. Vanoshandisa inonzi creative method. Ekunyasa kuona kuti from afar they'll put us in a corner to the point yekuti tinouya kuzochikumbira chikwete tichocho whether tisingadi kana tichida. And when it happens, they identify or define their terms and conditions. Is when they do that, ndopane dambudziko ipapo. Tiri kutaura kuti okay, kana mari yazouya, let's get our cream team to say, look, we need to utilize these funds in this format. Izvi ndizvo zvirudiwa, asi isusu ngatidai.
Inini mari IMF chikwambo, guys. That's to me. Chikwambo.
Yeah, we know
Stay
that.
away from chikwambo.
I think nyaya yemari yeIMF inogona kutitenderedza. I think tinogona kutoipa mukana wayo kuti tiitaure. We have been here for the past 1.5 hours. I think zvinogona kukosha kuti tichiita wind down. I think donzo redu ratatangana nderekuti independence tikazosvika kunyaya yekuti leadership yekuti net. Saka tomboita final thoughts. What does independence mean to you, Dr. Chamapio?
Okay. Independence to me, without economic independence, there is no independence. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Shumba. I think we have been independent for the past 45 years. What can you point to as our achievements?
I think we can achieve both political and economic independence without looking at other people or the support of other people. It's just when you put your brains on the table to achieve that. I think once you don't believe in yourself, then that's the major problem. I think believe in yourself that you are capable of bringing your own political and economic independence. That should be the starting point. Once you don't believe that, then which means you're not going to put in structures that will allow you to achieve those ends. So to me, I think Zimbabwe, one achievement that I salute is the redistribution of land. Of course, we still need a lot of accountability in that regard because a lot of people hoarded land and some of our people still don't have land. So there needs to be accountability when it comes to land. The pie in Zimbabwe needs to be redistributed so that every Zimbabwean, the country is so rich that every Zimbabwean can enjoy. But at the moment, the leadership we have is think in limited fashion. They think in limited ways. They think they are just concerned about tomorrow. Pani politics, Zedumbu, is what drives us most, more than having a greater vision or a vision for the future that sees Zimbabwe as a powerhouse. We can be the powerhouse of Africa if people begin to imagine or to take a different perspective on things. I think that's all I can say.
Umba.
Yes.
Kwamboiswa idea yekuti if we want to have a functional Zimbabwe, we need to put on the table. Was bringing Finance Minister Mtulingwe a step in that direction?
Mtulingwe, from my perspective, he has overstayed his hospitality. No more, I could be wrong. Chatikuda at the moment, in terms of new politics, we should be in a position to define unconditional positive regard, empathy, non-judgmental approach, effective understanding of the economy, and the crowd. That partnership crowd is very important. Both the crowd and its social volume makes things happen. Things happen in that format. And if we are going to substantiate our independence to another level, we should follow that kind of format. Yes, some positive stuff have happened, but we need to escalate it to another level. At the moment, we are functioning below poverty line, and we have to work extremely hard. That's my take on that.
Thank you very much, Soko. Tenderana chiri kushota is the rule of law.
maonera ndo
What can be the role of women to bring about such accountability in our society?
madzimai zvese pamwe chete nevarume padzinoroongwa tinofanira kunge tiripo semadzimai tichipawo njere dzedu tichionawo kuti zviri kufamba sei. Ende kana tichinge tataura kudai inini hangu chandinodai follow up kuti orit izvi zvinogona kuitika, saka kuti zviitike what's the next step. Kune vari interested toita sei kuti tiite next step towards the solution, because zvatinotaura izvi there should be a solution, whether we are talking sevarume or sevakadzi or tichironga kuenda mberi kuti next step what now, because tikangotaura tikati zvangu zvakanaka kudai tasumudza nyika yedu tozorega kusumudza kwacho, tinoita next month totaura futi same topic, next year tinenge tiripo futi pasame topic pasina kuenda mberi. Saka I think ndakamirira madzimai, we are ready for change, we want our children to have upenyu hwakanaka munyika mavo.
Thank you very much, viewers. Those who are going to listen to us, we have heard it. The panelists has discussed what the independence of Zimbabwe mean, and we delved into a lot of things. The final thoughts from Dr. Chamapiwa was we can achieve both political and the economic independence. Echoed by Shumba, we need to bring our best brains on the table for the betterment of our country. And the one thing that we can be proud of is we had our land redistribution, although we still need accountability in that regard. Umba, a new kind of politics, effective systems, and that can bring about a new change. Soko aiwa isusu tinoti kana tinge tadzidziya saizvozvo izvi ngazvisamirire paungoziya chete. Let's put action. So thank you for watching, and we'll be back again with other programs on Champions Network TV.
Yeah.